sit around the table instead of over here on the side.
You can,
Sure, yeah,
wherever you
please.
want, join us.
I think it's a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
Come
will.
on in. Pretty informal here. Okay.
Now I've got the sun in my eyes. You wanna come? Yeah. Just down toward.
All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today. The Older Vermonters Caucus. I thought this week we would have a discussion about housing for older Vermonters. And I put together just some people that I think would be great to kind of have a diverse conversation. They all come from different backgrounds. And so I have Kevin Shu from the Vermont Futures Project, Kim Fitzgerald from Cathedral Square, who's joining us online, Seth Jensen from the Lamoille Regional Planning Commission, my go-to guy always for anything to do with planning and zoning or anything like that, and Rick Singari from HomeShare. So, I thought we would just kind of have a discussion about just different ideas or different things we should be thinking about in this building around housing for older Vermonters. And, I look at my community of Wolcott and think about just the housing needs. I have a lot of, individuals who are overhoused. They're still living in the same house that they have been living in for years. It's not typically right on the main road, usually up on East Hill or wherever. And, think about how could we have housing opportunities for them to stay in their community and be able to not have a great big house out in the middle of nowhere. So maybe I'm just going to kick it off to Kevin because I know he's got to leave a little bit early, and then we'll just ask everyone to join in as we get going. So thank you, Kevin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for the invite. I'll begin with some remarks on demographics, how it intersects with housing, and share a bit of data. Because I know every time I get invited to something, people want me to share data. So Vermont is the second oldest state by median age. Dependency ratio is a metric that is a good signal of economic pressures that can come from demographics. So that's just the ratio of working age people relative to the number of dependents, both children and elderly. Vermont is actually middle of the pack when it comes to dependency ratio, and that's because we have very few children. But when we take a look at the number of older Vermonters, that's a really high ratio. To give you more specifics about that, in terms of the 25 to 44-year-old cohort, as a proportion of the overall population, Vermont has the second smallest proportion of any state in the country. For the 65 plus cohort, we're the second highest in terms of proportion of the overall population in Vermont. So why do I share those? I know we're here to talk about housing. I want to show how demographics intersects with housing, and a good way to think through that is median household size. In 1970, median household size in Vermont was about 3.21. 1970 is also the year that Act 250 was passed, right? So in 1970, Vermont had a much younger population with growing families, which means adults and children all under one roof. And many of the homes in Vermont right now were built during that era in the 70s and 80s. And then we had a lot built pre-1940 as well. We have some old housing stock along with our old people. So those homes that were built in the 70s and 80s were built to meet the needs of the population at that time, right? Larger families, larger homes. So many of them were single family homes with many bedrooms. New housing construction has steadily declined in recent decades. And as those kids in the 70s and 80s started to grow up, they then entered a housing market where they were competing for scarce housing resources because we didn't build enough new housing. Their choices were compete in that scarce market, stay at home with their parents, or leave to Vermont. We didn't build enough new homes for them to retain those young Vermonters to start their families here. Some of them may have wanted to stay put, right? But didn't have that option. So meanwhile, older Vermonters are living in homes that might be larger than their current needs, Some of them might want to downsize, right? Choice within a market is a good thing, but if we haven't created enough new housing, they don't have that choice. They're stuck in place and occupying a home that might be a good fit for a growing family. So we're not efficiently using the housing stock that we have. And I'll come back to median household size here. Median household size now is down to about 2.3. Now, just to put some of that in context, if Vermont's median household size today was the same as it was in 1970, our overall population would be about 900,000 people based on the number of households there are. So new housing in that sense could have a catalytic effect to unlock our housing market so that we more efficiently use what we have by bringing mobility back to the Vermont housing market, enabling people to move into housing that meets their current needs and not the needs of 50 years ago.
Yeah, and when we think about efficiently using the housing that people are living in, makes me think about home share. So I think about, especially in more rural parts of our state where, home share is definitely a good option and have been showing a lot of success and helping people stay in their homes through that partnership. So Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. I'll start very briefly. If you aren't familiar with home share, what we do is match people who have room in their homes with those looking for an affordable place to live. And we do that we make sure that people are safe. So we do background and reference checks and then learn what people's needs are as far as rent and help around the home, what their interests are, their lifestyles are, and then try to match them. I'll tell you that I started with home share just about 3 years ago. And at that time, we had about 65 to 70 home share matches at any given time. Today, we have 107. So that's a 50% increase in 3 years. A year ago, we would have told you we had 90. So that's a 20% increase in just that amount of time. And we've been able to expand now, thanks to the legislature, into all the Northeast Kingdom, which we just launched a few months ago, and all of Windham and Windsor County. And those are through partnerships with the NEK Council on Aging, the Senior Center in Woodstock, the Thompson, and then the Windham and Windsor Housing Trust. And what's incredible is the number of applications we've already gotten from those areas. We've already made a match down in Windham County and just in the expanded NEK area. We just made a match this week in Reigate. So the need is there for people to stay in their homes, to get some additional funding as in rent or some help around the home. The maximum rent, we try to make this an affordable situation. The maximum rent someone can ask for a room in their home is $650. If they have an ADU or an in-laws apartment, it would be $800. They can ask for up to 12 hours of help each week in the home. So right now, the guest is paying an average of $380 a month. Which is, what is that? 1/4, 1/5, a 1-bedroom apartment in the state. And they're providing 8.5 hours of help to their host every week. And that's help around the home. It's not home health care or any kind of private or personal care. And the matches are lasting about a year to 5 years. 2 years is the average. We do have one that's going on 20 years right now, one on 19. But when you think about those 107 matches that are going on right now, that's 107 units of housing we didn't have to pay for, right? We didn't have to use the energy for. And it's 107 people who've been able to stay in their home, feel comfortable and safe in their homes. It's 107 people who have housing at a very reduced rate. So by creating these matches, we're saving people a lot, by doing this. So, yeah.
No, this is great. And do you feel one of the barriers is just getting the word out about this opportunity for people?
Yeah. So it's interesting. We've been around for 44 years. And, whenever we go places, people, oh my gosh, I haven't heard of this before, right? So last fiscal year, we did 102 presentations. We only have 7 people on our staff. But we will go anywhere, anytime, and talk to anybody. Monday I was on a Zoom with NEK Prosper. Yesterday I was at a wonderful dinner in Winooski, community dinner. Saturday morning I was at a church group, men's group in St. Jay. Last week it was in Bellas Falls, the library. So the most important thing is to get the word out, talk to people face to face. It's not for everybody, granted, someone might have a 5-bedroom home and they live by themselves, and we're not going to convince them necessarily that this is the right thing to do, but it certainly can be an option for a lot of people. And even if it's not anyone who's here today or listening on Zoom, it could be someone right? I mean, Saturday morning when I was with that group, there was a guy next to me who's going to need housing in a few months. So I was there for him, and a gentleman across the room who said, oh my gosh, I'm going to take this information right to my friend who has a home, and this could be perfect for him. So yeah, the important thing is getting the word.
What sort of timeline might someone expect if I said to you today, hey, Rick,
Yep.
this might be something for me. I've got room in my house. What might I expect?
Yeah, so because we do that very methodical process of background and reference checks, an interview, an introduction between a potential host and guest, a 2-week trial, and then the match. At lightning speed, we could do a match in a month, but usually it's going to take 2 months to 6 months. And there's never any guarantee that everybody that applies will be matched. It's just a matter of if we have the right person at the time they apply. Usually hosts have a longer timeline than guests. Guests might need to be out of a situation within a timeline that the hosts can wait until we find the right one. So.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
Representative Mary Howard and I sit on the General Housing Committee, and this is my 5th term, and we have heard testimony a few years ago from your organization, and actually there was a woman there who was sharing her home, so it was nice to hear her perspective. I think this is a wonderful idea. I have heard of great friendships that have developed from this. And if you'll leave me your contact, I would
Totally.
be happy to have you maybe come to Rutland County.
Excellent.
And-
Yeah. So with Rutland County and Bennington, the last 2, and trust me, we want to be there. The last 2 we don't have a presence in yet. What we're looking for is that partner, right? So that'd be a great thing for us to talk about, because that's how we were able to expand. We can't open up an office and staff it. We just don't have the money to do that, right? The efficient way is to do that partnership with like the council, with the housing trust. And that's what we need right now in your area.
We do have an office, council on aging.
I can't wait to talk to you. So I'm the person who takes these calls, and I keep a file. It's called Outside Our Coverage Area. And everybody kind of laughed at me for years. And then as soon as we expanded into first Northern Windsor County, and now all of Windham and Windsor and the NEK, I've pulled out that file and let people know who I promised as soon as we get there, I'll let you know. And now I have my Rutland and Bennington file going on. So, yeah.
And just kind of pivoting back to some of the, what Kevin was talking about and things I've spoken to him about is like,
Arizona visiting her mother and going crazy.
how do we, hang on, someone online.
And then another lady
Hang on.
who has never been to the senior center.
So you just kind of, bear with me 1 second. All right, got it. About, we don't have someone who wants to share. We've got to think about how we're going to increase our housing stock. Kevin and I spoke about this also, when we think about smaller developments. So before I get to Kim, Seth, what kind of things kind of bubble up in the planning and in towns when they're talking about this, town plans? Do you hear and what do you think around age-specific housing or housing in our village centers for older Vermonters, keep people in the community?
Sure, so Seth Jensen, Deputy Director of the Lamoille County Planning Commission. This issue of age-specific housing comes up, I think, in every municipal plan update that we work with communities on. And rural communities face some unique and specific barriers, both to people aging in place, and by that I mean aging in the home that they lived in previously, and then aging within the community. And by that I mean relocating but staying within the community. And those are specific and related issues. So just for some background for Lamoille County, and I think it is going to be similar to many of the communities and districts you all serve. 80% of land area in Lamoille County is either state-owned, conserved, or in current use. So that's a significant portion of the land area. We do have, vibrant, functional, intact villages and downtowns, but the combined wastewater capacity of every municipal system in the region is less than the wastewater capacity available in the village of Essex Junction. So one little, or city of Essex Junction, I'm sorry if there are any Essex Junction. I went to Essex High School, so I'm allowed. One community in Chittenden County has more available capacity than the entire region. And why that matters is that the scale of sort of traditional age-specific housing, which serves a very important need, is such that it's very hard to downscale to the size of a Belvedere or Wolcott. I mean, I think the 20 to 30 units is sort of the smallest when to be able to pay for the support services, the elevators, the other needs. And so what that means is that the focus is in, the larger communities, and then the wait lists are long, because if something were built in Morrisville or Johnson or Stowe, the draw area would also be Wolcott, Worcester, Belvedere, Eden. So to meet the need, and that serves a really important need, and I want to make sure, because I know folks from Cathedral Square are talking after, please continue supporting that need, because it serves a very important need. The really need to look at different solutions for the smaller communities. And I'll talk first about aging in place in someone's home. Vermont and the legislature have made a lot of changes in recent years to state statute to remove some of the barriers to things like accessory dwelling units. That's been very beneficial and helpful. There are other barriers to, for example, if someone is converting a bedroom to an accessory dwelling unit, it is not a one-to-one shift in the wastewater rules. And there are some assumptions in the wastewater rules that are based on demographics that are older and don't reflect the current family structures. That doesn't mean throw them out completely, but that does mean looking at the technical rules and thinking about how they translate to families today. There's also code issues, and then just the cost. And this is, personally for me, because it's something that my family's talking about with our rural home with a septic system built in the 80s. And it's the cost of that. It's also cost of internal renovations, all of those. And those are, expensive. Bringing a home that was built for a young family in the 70s or 80s to meeting the accessibility needs of an elder is not a small task. There's a reason why the age-specific housing is built the way it is. So that is a challenge. In terms of then the aging in the community, so downsizing within the community, again, there have been good changes sort of to how communities are directed to treat small multifamily units in statutes recently. There are other things like the unit calculations in Act 250 that haven't caught up to that yet. And not all, there are other standards like parking standards and wastewater allocations and all of these that can impact whether each specific housing is doable and functional. And so getting to that critical mass of smaller units that are available, but not to the point of some of the bigger demands like elevators and other things that really drive up the cost is really challenging to do in smaller communities. And it would be great to see some direct thought about all of the rules that play into that. Just one last piece is the support, like doctors, physical therapy, right? Those are important too. So we are talking, I know I was supposed to talk about housing, but because this happened in Dan's community, lack of water and wastewater means difficulty doing things like physical therapy. And if you have to go to Hardwick or Copley for those, then staying in Wolcott is hard.
Yeah. We got a question.
Yeah.
Representative, thanks.
Thank you. I actually was going to touch just upon that, which is that in the area where I live in the Upper Valley, where Jim also lives, we have had a kind of rise, for lack of a better word, of a series of community nursing programs. And I wonder whether how are those things kind of knit together smaller solutions that can beget bigger solutions.
Yeah, and I think community nursing and the access to healthcare, especially in our more rural communities, that'll definitely be an upcoming topic, but also.
It's not access to healthcare, and in my area, it is part of a series of, I said, just for full disclosure, I said on board of our area aging in place organization. It's just aging in place, but Reading, West Windsor aging in place, and we started community nursing because, in part because the other aging in place organizations that were popping up also started offering community nursing. But community nursing is really more about housing, oddly enough, because it is doing a safety survey and talking with family members and taking vitals and making recommendations, but it's not medical care. It's
Right.
It's kind of, it's almost like the missing part of aging in place that doesn't include nursing. It doesn't include the other
Successful aging.
and I wondered whether we are in a vacuum. That's my question, is whether that is the same in other parts of the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some supportive services that we'll hear from with SASH, that probably play a very similar role as making sure people have access to the wellness of living in rural parts of our state. So, yeah, and kind of back to some of the things Seth was talking about. I know we made some changes around in the ability of communities to increase infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as we, continue to see this population changing, and the need for greater development, in our village centers and downtowns where we can have infrastructure or where we've upgraded infrastructure to allow for more development. So back to your question, you know, I think that, you know, all of these things play in, whether it's the capacity, the home share options, and just being able to provide people with the support they need to age in their community, whether it's healthcare or just like making sure that there's no trip hazards and stuff in their homes and, you know.
I think it depends on the community, like when our aging in place group began, I was in my his 40s. I was the youngest person in that group by 20 years.
Mhm.
And as the group started themselves, and they all had different oh, it's okay, I see. As they have, and so we had all these ideas about
Yeah.
how to knit our older community and with our younger community, young part of our community, and kind of bring the two ends of the community
Mhm.
together to create longevity and prosperity. That was the beginning, and then as it evolved and as the, you know, original members themselves aged, they never did have a plan for aging in place. Now they have started to realize what the actual needs of aging in place. So when I started, I had little children, so I was bringing up the other end of the spectrum. But I was like, you know, what will you do when your spouse dies, or when you are, you know, when you're rolling around in this big house by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about that at all? They all had, at the time, had just gone through that with their parents.
Yeah.
And so now, now 15 years later, they are the people who are trying to figure it out. And it's sort of like reinventing the wheel. It's really hard to watch the wheel be reinvented over and over again in these rural communities. I just wondered whether there are a lot of really complete organizations in New Hampshire because they have an actual structure for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered whether other areas of our state thought, you know, whether there is an internal regional structure, or whether there's something that we could do as a legislature to help that along.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and we'll definitely continue with that because I think that is important. But while we're still going, I just want to go over to Kim, where we think about where people can age in their community and the difference between our more rural areas and urban areas, and the work that Cathedral Square is doing with. And, you know, one of the things that I was recently talking to them about was their waiting list, and how when people do want to downsize into more supportive housing, you know, it's not like the next day. I mean, we heard even just to get a home share, there's some time changes in there. And Glenn, I'll get to you definitely. I just want to turn it over to Kim real quick and just get your perspective on the work that Cathedral Square is doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to be by Zoom today. I want to just start by saying we absolutely believe that housing is healthcare, to the representative's earlier point, and we'd be happy to come and do another session on SASH, which is statewide and does have a infrastructure, and we'd be happy to do that. But today I'm actually going to share my screens, Dan, and share a quick PowerPoint with everybody.
Yeah, I think I can. Let me just find you right here. Oh, you can already do it. Fantastic.
All right, good. So first of all, I know many of you actually in the room, but I'm Kim Fitzgerald, the CEO for Cathedral Square. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but just want to give some background. Cathedral Square was created by St. Paul's Cathedral in downtown Burlington because they had some extra land, and they formed a committee to determine what was the greatest need in Burlington at that time. And what they came back with was affordable senior housing. And that was in the 1970s. And I would tell you that is still true today. And so we were formed with the sole purpose of constructing 3 Cathedral Square in downtown Burlington, which finalized in 1979. I also do want to have a call out because Rick was presenting earlier. I don't know if people know that Project Home, which is now Home Share, did start under the Cathedral Square umbrella. So we're also thrilled to hear all the great work that Home Share is doing. I want to call out that Doris Allard is a resident who moved in with us very early on when this building opened, and she ended up living with us for 40 years before her passing. And I point that out for two reasons. One is just to show that, you know, our residents are living with us for a long time. It's not transitional in nature. And because it was obviously a great honor that she chose to make Cathedral Square her home for that many years. We've gone on from that one building to create 28 communities in Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle County. We do have over 1,100 apartments right now, serving over 1,300 people. Our latest property that we opened is Reed Commons up in St. Albans. And this is 33 apartments, and it is a mix of income levels as well as apartment sizes. And we, to kind of Dan's earlier point, we received over 150 applications just for this one community. So obviously almost 5 times the number of units available here. And many of those who received the call to say that they were able to get in were completely overwhelmed with emotion, learning that, you know, they had been selected. 70% of our residents who moved into this community were either living currently in St. Albans or they were born in St. Albans and they were returning. So again, just showing that by building in the community, it really helps support those people where they are currently living and where they have their networks. Notably, we also had 11 households here that moved in having sold their homes. So again, to earlier conversations, those single family homes that are being underutilized with one person living there, and they may have 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms in their home. And yet, you know, they're a single person and they want to move, right? Because they don't want to have to deal with the maintenance on their house or the upkeep or shoveling the driveway. We also, within this community, we had 6 people who moved in from homelessness. So you can see a nice range of people, you know, we're serving. And by creating more affordable housing for older adults, what we call age-specific housing, it frees up that housing stock in the community, you know, so that single family can move in, folks with kids, people of the workforce that we need. And again, to an earlier point, it's housing stock already available, doesn't need an infusion of more cash, and it's already built. It doesn't take any time. You know, increased access to affordable housing also means that older adults don't have to choose between, you know, paying for medications or rent or food. It improves quality of life, and for some, it restores their dignity that they may have lost when they were having to make those impossible decisions. It also provides older adults with the opportunity to remain in their community. As I already mentioned, 70% within this Reed Commons were able to stay right in St. Albans, where they're part of the community fabric. The next property that we built also last year, that opened last year, I should say, was our Kelly's Field 2 property in Heinsberg. And our property that we're working on next is up in Highgate. And we hope to be opening that maybe sometime in 2027 or 2028. And I did want to call out some recent research that you may have seen in an op-ed that I did. And it comes out of the University of Chicago. And what it finds, and I think it's quite surprising to others who kind of don't work in this world or this industry, is that moving into senior housing, we call it age-specific housing, really does improve stabilization and healthcare utilization, and it decreases costs. It also found this research found that senior housing residents experience greater longevity than non-congregate comparison group. And overall, the findings showed that significant improvements in health, longevity, and quality of life when you move into congregate or age-specific housing. We also have some SASH research that is not yet to be published. So you're getting kind of a sneak peek preview that we have been working with Dr. Khan, and they have been doing research on our SASH participants across the state of Vermont, and have found that only 24.5% of SASH participants have categorized themselves as lonely, which is lower than the national average, which is upwards of like 34%. Also, they have found that SASH participants were less likely, older SASH participants. So, you know, the trend is typically you see higher loneliness as age progresses. And in older SASH participants, it actually was the reverse, that they were less likely to experience loneliness. And participants living at SASH housing locations were 20% less likely to be lonely than those living in the community. So again, just trying to show some of the health aspects, positive health aspects of living in congregate housing settings. Also, Age Strong Vermont Plan. I think Sarah's in the room, so she can also speak to this. Recently worked with Lerner College public health students, and they completed surveys across the state. And from the respondents, they learned that those completing the survey that were in private residences responded significantly higher to loneliness than those living in senior or age-specific housing. So I just wanted to share some of those points, and I wanted to say to all the legislators in the room that we're, of course, very, very happy for full statutory funding for VHCB, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, but we absolutely need more to make any kind of dent or close the gap on the affordable housing crisis that exists in Vermont. As Dan alluded to earlier, we have as I mentioned, 1,100 apartments, and we have over 1,300 people waiting to get into one of our apartments currently. So the wait is typically 3 to 5 years. It is not, I can move in tomorrow, I can move in within 6 months. It's years. And with that, I'll close.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely, we think about this topic, and here we're almost through our time. So I do want to catch Kevin because I know he has to leave a little bit. If there are any final thoughts, and I appreciate you being here today and your opening remarks around, our demographics. And so sounds like this topic we could totally continue with.
Certainly, and thanks again for having me. I think that I'll tie together some of the remarks that have already been made to say that housing is healthcare, housing is community building, and that we just saw statistics on loneliness, right? This is being talked about as a national epidemic, and how great would it be if Vermont would be a national leader in solving multiple issues at once. This is one of the things I think about quite often, which is Vermont, as one of the oldest states by median age, we have the distinct privilege of experiencing the economic and labor market impacts of demographics before many other parts of the country. Because if you look at the United States fertility rates and demographic trends, the rest of the country is also getting older. So we will either be a leader or what to do or what not to do. One of those things will happen. I know which one I prefer. But it's a really remarkable position to be in because the solutions that we're developing here in the state are ones that could potentially be exported and scaled to solve national issues as well. And that's a responsibility that I think Vermont is ready for.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally agree. I mean, we definitely are going to be dealing with this in the years to come, and our thoughts and bringing people together to try to come up with some solutions could be models for other states, and we'll take that, right? We always like to be out in front, so.
Economic development.
Yeah, I want to jump to Glenn. I know he had his hand up. Glenn.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Glenn McCrae, I'm on the Age Well board, and I just wanted to share a quick story, and then I have a question. One of my first community projects in Vermont in 1984 was in the town of Rochester, and there was that community concern that Dan has expressed of, we're losing our older residents. They can't live in their homes safely. They're moving out of the area. And a community group got together to try to start to address that, and immediately thought, oh, well, we need to build senior housing in the community. Absent resources to do that, they did set up a volunteer age-in-place assistance program through a whole series of partnerships. And then later actually continued that organizing and took over the inn, the Park House Inn on the Green, and converted it into senior housing. And it's a whole series of incredible partnerships that are going on. And it's a history, I think, that we really should capture, and those stories are critically important. I have to just step away for just a second because I've got a delivery at the door. I apologize, but I just wanted to plug that idea of history into our consideration.
Yeah. So Seth, anything that's kind of come up with some of the conversations we've had since Anything bubbling up, or Rick?
Well, I prefer questions. because it
Yeah,
seems
or
like
anyone
people
else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Question, actually, and I feel silly for not knowing this, but in terms of home share Vermont, if somebody has a home and they think, wow, I'd really love somebody to live here, but a modification is really needed for someone to move in with me, is that something that Home Share Vermont has a way to support?
No, so we don't have the funding for that type of thing. There's other agencies, other programs in the state we could point people to, but that is not a program. We did have someone in Burlington who had some holes in the ceiling and the walls and was really afraid of sharing their home. And the Champlain Housing Trust is a group that could certainly help them. So we're not that agency. We match people. And you know, one thing our previous executive director, Kirby Dunn, really kind of preached was we got to stay in our lane and do what we do to help the people that we can help. And then those other agencies that can help with those types of things will help.
I'm trying to remember the name of the program, but we have one to help people, you know, with these modifications.
It's called LIHEAP.
Well, LIHEAP is for the heating.
VHIP.
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 VHIP, yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
I can't believe I know the acronyms. and you all don't.
But LIHEAP is definitely important, especially in our rural communities, to help people heat those big homes, for sure. So, you know, there are resources, and I know that, you know, these are probably investments that we're going to continue to really have to think about as we look at our housing stock that's, you know, could use those modifications so that people can remain in their community. As we heard from Kim, how many people, you know, moved from the community into the housing that they're building. Like, it'd be great to try to track that. Like, given the opportunity, how many people opt to stay in their community versus, you know, look for something else. And I always say, you know, in Wolcott, if we tell someone, hey, we got a place for you in Stowe, they're probably going to say, I think I'm good right here. You know, until we can have that housing stock. Matthew. I saw your hand up, Matthew. Thanks for being here.
Well, greetings. You know, Zoom etiquette. You can turn your camera on or off. Just when speaking, just turn your camera on. And when you're done speaking, just turn your camera off. That's why I do a Zoom etiquette. So, yes, you know, the question is, you know, I noticed that the governor has put, you know, and I represent the Franklin and Grand Isle County partnership, community partnership for that, the region up here in the north, you know, west, northeast, you know, of Vermont. The question I have is, you know, how about those modules that, you know, that the governor's been asking for, you know, to put in the ground or pass legislation? I know that they want, we got modules, basically mobile homes that are ready to be, you know, used. But I do know that you can add some accessibility options to them, like the ones in Burlington. I'm wondering what's the progress? I know the governor wants more of those type of, you know, housing, you know, affordable housing. What's the progression of that moving forward? Or how many does he want to bring online per year? Or
yeah,
and
I definitely think that these are the conversations that we're going to need to continue to have. You know, what different types of housing can we develop in our communities as we build out water and wastewater and the infrastructure that we need to support that housing. Glenn, I got to look at the time. I got to go back to committee. We're all kind of jumping around here, but keep going.
Yeah, I'll follow up with a note, Dan. This is really important. Part of the story in terms of what happened in Rochester was they took over existing infrastructure and converted it. There's a lot of underutilized potentially multi-family housing infrastructure throughout Vermont in every small village. And that's an area that I think deserves a lot more attention to see what we can do with things that are already on the sewage system, on the water system.
Yeah.
So appreciate.
We heard some of that in committee yesterday, you know, where some schools had been repurposed into housing. Yeah. And, you know, and I think there was just a piece in the paper recently, or one of the Digger or 7 Days about, you know, looking at how we can utilize existing buildings We just saw a nursing home close in Colchester. And is there the possibility that though I know it needs a lot of work, is there the possibility that could be turned into housing? These are the kind of things that we're going to be talking about in the years to come. And I think this topic, I'll probably do another one of these after town meeting on housing, because it was great to see a bunch of legislators here today. Obviously, this is something that kind of keeps bubbling up in our work here, especially in relationship to healthcare, as we were talking about earlier. Thank you everyone for being here today. We're back in Human Services Committee, but I just want one final word. We really need to think about older Vermonters who are unhoused. This is something that's been keeping me up at night. It's been a topic in our committee, and I just don't want to let that go. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Dan. Do you have a quick question?
You may.
Thank you for your work.
I love it.